actually the biggest cost is trust. Because once people really feel like they trust a forecast call and they're all connected to the real business, really start focusing on the outcome and stop managing the numbers. And if we're not aligned, that breaks down and that has a bigger cost than just missing a target.
I did not think that the finance person was going to talk about trust. Back Remix Roundtable, where I bring in experts to discuss current trends or challenges and give you insights that you need to grow. I'm Summer Paletti, your host and founder and CRO of Rise of Us, where we solve or prevent stalled revenue growth for SaaS and fintech orgs and set them up for their next level. This is part 2 of the alignment series, and it was going to be one panel, but then when I recorded it, I knew we missed something. We tackled go-to-market alignment, sales, marketing, customer success, and then I made those GTM leaders talk about back office alignment. But then when editing, I realized that we had left a couple of things out. So this is a continuation. And what we didn't cover is what happens when your executives think that everything's aligned, but everyone silently knows it's total bullshit. So today I am joined by 2 people who see this mess up close. Valerie Martin, COO, who builds the systems that turn "we're totally aligned" into numbers that you can actually track on your P&L, and Raven Page, change management consultant who deals with the people side, because culture is where your perfect alignment strategy goes to die. So quick note on the power of networking. Valerie is here because I did a call out to my network, and Reut Lazo, co-founder of Women X AI, recommended her highly. So your network is your net worth. And then Raven is here because we met on LinkedIn and I saw her hair and I was like, girl, you are my people. You need to meet me and you have to come on my show. And I'm so sad that my purple has faded. I really did not time this out very well, but take it off LinkedIn. That is the power of that platform. So today our topic is the alignment you're missing, why your culture and your numbers have to match your strategy. And you can't have the prettiest org chart in the world. You could still be completely broken. So the challenge here is that your CEO and CFO, they have different conversations about the same numbers. Maybe they disagree a little. Your executive team thinks everything's great, but of course, like 3 levels down, everybody's like 1 foot out the door. I know we've all seen that. The finance team doesn't trust anything the sales leader forecasts. As a sales leader, I've had those conversations, and nobody connect what your team does every day back to whether you're actually, I don't know, making money. So today we're talking about the stuff underneath alignment, the culture and the numbers, what actually makes it work or proves it was all just fluff. So Raven, let's start with you. When you walk into a company and the executives swear that everything is aligned, where do you look first to find out if they're full of shit?
I talked to the people team and I asked them the reports that have been coming in the last 90 days, because while employee engagement surveys are great, some employees do still feel that they're not anonymous, that we actually really know who's saying it, so they don't give the real deal. But if you talk to the people business partners, they know everything. And people talk to them like we're in a secret spy society, and they're like, yeah, down at the water cooler, the quote unquote water cooler, because a lot of us are remote, that fucking asshole thought he could give it to me straight and I'm not having it. That like radical honesty that some people don't really understand how that's supposed to work. So people business partners, you go to them and they'll give you all the dirt, and they'll let you know what's happening. And then the first line managers, not middle managers, not the leadership, not the executive, first line managers who are doing all the work with all the people at the bottom of your period. I don't period, not that period, but the pyramid. That's how much I dislike saying pyramid. But periods are real and they can affect you just as bad. But yes, that's who you really want to talk to. They know what's going on. Also, you get coffee with the executive assistants if they had them, or whoever they are, because they know all the dirt, all of it, all of it.
They do.
That's where I go.
Yes, get them to spill the tea.
Mm-hmm,
I like that you mentioned the first line supervisors. We put so much on those people, and they are like holding all the burden. They have
Mhm.
no power. We don't
Yeah.
pay them well enough.
Nope.
Yes, first
Mm-mm.
line managers. So Valerie, I would like to hear your take on, you know, do you have something to add to that?
I agree. I agree. Basically, a lot of the conversations, if they're not trickling in the room, they'll be trickling outside the room, and having the right connections on who's actually making those decisions or the line of power. That's kind of basically where you get a lot of information that you don't have on paper or on reports, like Raven you mentioned. So totally agree.
Yeah. Well, and then is there anything from a structural or operational or numbers perspective that we're missing here? Because it's not all about water coolers and tea.
No, but for me, it's interesting because we associate finance to forecasts. And where I get a lot of insight is the forecast conversation itself.
Mm.
So if you really go in a conversation of look at it this lens, right? You'll like when you listen in, like you know what's going on, if it's actually broken or not, and where your information is. So
Mm.
when leadership is disconnected from what is really happening in the business, you feel it. It's like the conversations start, you know, disconnected from reality, and it becomes a negotiation. And it's true. Instead of really answering like the purpose of the forecast call is the so what, right? Well, the conversation moves on. How do I make my targets? Or like, this is my number versus my number. And it dilutes from what should we do as an action? What are the risks? Like, what are our goals? Like, what are we emerging? So if you really listen at the tone and where the conversation goes, for me, that's where I get a lot of the conversation. And
Mm.
from a finance lens is if the story does stop making sense, like if you really listen to it, the pipeline will go suddenly on how to close the gap, or the assumptions changes every quarter. So then everything changes and it's not connected. So it becomes finger pointing. So
Mm.
it's kind of super interesting from my point of view. And obviously the matrix, like let not say the matrix, but when, you know, marketing starts only talking about, um, how they celebrate, they close some leads and, sells the same thing. And things are not tied to what the real goal is margin or revenue. And then finance, we're stuck reconciling three stories. So a lot of it is if you listen to the tone of the conversation and if you look at the whole ecosystem, how marketing, go to market, all of us were connected, the real stories are being told in the forecast call. So just listen in and you'll see your cues right there.
You know
Mhm.
what? You reminded me of something that I didn't think we were going to talk about today, but it's
Cool.
really important. What I see sometimes is a huge disconnect between what the reality feels like and what each leader brings to those calls.
Mhm.
And we'll call it what it is. It's just vanity metrics. They pick and choose the metrics that they want to bring because it makes them look good. But then you're like, okay, if all this stuff is hitting all on all cylinders, like there's always a disconnect, or some leaders bring different, I don't know if you've seen this, where they'll bring different metrics each quarter. And
Oh,
you're like, hold on,
absolutely.
you
Every
reported on
time.
this last
Mhm.
quarter, but now you're reporting on this. Like, I don't get it. And then if you ask a question, and here's where you're right, the conversation where they can't back it up and they're kind of like, if they can't defend their numbers, huge red flag.
But that comes back to definition, which numbers you're debating, right? So we're all storytellers. So which story you want to say? And we're all right because we all know our business. I'll never be an expert of HR or go to market or so on. But how does it connect to the financial outcomes and what we're trying to drive? So if you get
Mhm.
those connection and it
Mm.
comes back on definition, then you could see the conversation is shifting on defending numbers or how do we get alignment to no, let's make decision. This is the strategy and this is the outcome. So let's figure out how you do your best job. I'm not telling you how to do it, but let's align on the outcome. And the only way you're going to get there is talk the same language. So a lot of it is, yes, all their KPIs are amazing, but are they operational ones where you should drive your business? But how does that tie on your P&L? How does it tie on your earnings? How does it tie to where we're driving and where we're trying to land the plane?
Yeah. And then I want to close it with you, Raven. Like, I know there's culture here, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes,
it's
yes,
always
yes.
there. And it is
Is
always the reason why shit goes the wrong way.
Yes, yes, because then the matrix, when we're talking about numbers and you go to the people team, we work with finance on this, and this is where the budgeting comes in. Your P&L gets blown all to hell because of attrition. Where's your attrition? And you can tell the story of, their mom was sick. They had to go. See, this is the tea that you need. That's not why they left. That's not why they left. Leaders aren't
No, it's not.
communicating. There's infighting. This is why you need to be aligned with the people team. The people team is a strategic partner with this and works with finance, works with operations, works within the whole organization and knows the numbers. And was it regrettable attrition? What kind of attrition was it? And so then you look at how much does it take to then go out to find somebody else? How long does that take? How does it affect the sales and marketing team? Who did we need to replace? And then the training factor. And this is the worst thing you ever hear in the hiring team for talent. They need to hit the ground running.
Oh,
Okay.
what even does that
okay.
mean?
Nothing. It means nothing. It means they don't want to
We
do
are
their
not
job.
marathon-
They don't want to train. They don't want to invest. Where this is the culture. You
Ooh.
can't hit the ground running. You have to invest in this talent. You have to bring them into the culture, make them feel valued, respected, like they belong. That's how you win. Look at any metrics, and it always says happy, valued employees are the best employees who have the highest productivity. And the end. That's
I
it.
love that. By the way, that's a great soundbite because I've been on sales hiring and onboarding. So, yeah, I'm going to use that. Thank you for that little gift, Raven.
You're welcome.
Okay. So I want to connect this to like, why does it matter? It's all great to have good culture and have people not fighting and all that, but it's all going to just sound like kumbaya to a CEO or a board chair if it doesn't cost something. So let's dig in and think about like, what is the actual cost when the executives are just living in their own fantasy land? Because they do that sometimes. So Valerie, I want to start with you with the financial impact. We're talking missed targets, budget chaos, but like, why does it actually matter to like a board chair or an
Yeah.
investor?
No, it's interesting because I'm going to actually segue what you said, Raven. So check this out. I hope you like my answer. But it's like, obviously there's a cost that will show up in the financials very quickly. Like you'll know the numbers are kind of missed and usually but that's the surface of it. And if you go below, if you talk to leadership, this is of what's happening in the business. They'll say, well, budget was built on the wrong assumption. You were talking about attrition or not, and things don't hold. So it comes back to how you build it based on definition, what they think it is. And this is where you see the resources allocated in the wrong place or hiring got, hired ahead of demand or investing in the wrong programs or things are just not converting. And that's how to close the gap. And that's has a cost. But the organization, they'll spend the next quarter reacting. So there's a cost there too, instead of executing. And then the budgets get reshuffled and priorities shift. And then we're trying to catch up and we're all confused and we're not grounded in reality. But the biggest issue, and hopefully you'll like this one, it's actually the biggest cost is trust. If you think about it. Because once people really feel like they trust a target or they trust a forecast call and they're all connected to the real business, you really start focusing on the outcome and stop managing the numbers. So for me, like the concept of culture is huge because it ties into the financial, it ties to how we behave, and it really figure out how quick we could execute or not. And if we're not aligned, that breaks down and that has a bigger cost than just missing a target.
I did not think that the finance person was going to talk about trust. Love that. Yes. So before I say something, Raven, do your thing.
Perfect. That is the perfect answer because that is exactly right. And that comes down to your culture. And where does the culture start? The CEO, the founders, and stakeholders, they all play in that because employees look at all of this. And because we have CEOs who said, well, we just talked to the board. And what does that mean? Do we trust the board? What is the board saying? The board said to lay off 10 people. They did? Why? What's happening? So that is perfect. All of that is culture. All of that is. And the CEO has to drive it. He has to drive it up. It's called managing up. Hello. It's a thing and it's real. And managing down. And trust is a foundation for culture. You can't go anywhere without trust. So I love that, Valerie. Excellent job. You get all of it.
Yes.
It's
I
all
have a
about
pen.
partnering, right? We all have a role in how we are all stay connected.
Yes.
we cover each
Yeah.
other's blind spots, you know?
Well, and it makes
Mhm.
me think of like your frontline employees. Everyone wants to play for a winning team.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And they know if targets are being missed, they might not be in those forecast calls or those board meetings, but they feel it and they
Mhm.
know. And it breaks trust with the organization. And they start to think, like, we've flatlined for a while. I'm not seeing so many new clients coming in. We're seeing other
Mhm.
people leave. And they start to wonder if they're placing the wrong trust of their like career path in the wrong company. So then it all circles back to the attrition. It's this lovely
Mhm.
little cycle.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes, good
Yes. It's
stuff.
a full cycle that happens.
Good stuff. So next topic, and here's where I'm like, okay, now we got to get back to our notes. So Valerie, you said like that GTM metrics have to connect back to financial statements or it's all just made up numbers. You kind of put the like the budgets,
Mhm.
maybe the budget's based on the wrong numbers. So, can you give me a real example of what breaks when sales and finance are not aligned?
Absolutely. So let's just start with a word, pipeline. What does pipeline mean? No, it's true. So if you sit in a forecast call, pipeline usually reflects an activity from the field, right? So you have your CRO, what's activity, what's moving, what's not, and is the deal moving quick and is there velocity there, and what's the momentum with the customer? Pipeline for finance, what does it mean? It means we're looking at the same thing, but we want to know what translates to predictable revenue, right?
Mm,
What of that a percentage of that deal will convert? What might not convert? Like, what does it mean on a company plan in the translation? So the optimal signal for these two is basically like once we know the deal's coming, it converts, then I could have capital allocation conversation. I will know where to invest or not invest because everything is
mm,
connected to the financial and how to prioritize things. So where it breaks down is, are we aligned on the definition of pipeline? Like, what does pipeline mean? Can it look very healthy operationally? Yes, this is really great. But on a finance perspective, you could say, well, it doesn't translate in revenue as quick enough. Like it's not
mm,
done early enough. I'm trying to figure out my navigation conversation. So that's where it doesn't reconcile.
mm,
And so it comes back to like making sure we have shared definitions. So we're aligned and then at the executive level, like the common language has to tie back. So it comes back, yes, operationally, you have your pipeline, finance, you convert, but how are the both connected to your financial statements? Because
mm,
a pipeline is a leading indicator to say, okay, like it's going to lead. I'm going to see if I'm going to hit the numbers or not. Is it going to convert in 1 quarter, 2 or 3? But finance role is really how to signal on the outcome that we need to do. So
mm.
pipeline is an important word, and what it means is really double click on it for each organization.
Hmm. I have a question.
Mhm.
So I'm always the one in the room who gets to bag on salespeople. I love them. They are my people. However,
Mhm.
we have issues. Quick pause. The questions I ask when I'm on this show, the topics we talk about, these are the same things I see when I run diagnostics and retainers for growth stage companies. Why is revenue stuck? What's breaking? What should leadership own to fix it? What should you do most importantly now? What should you do, but it's less urgent and you can do it later? Most leaders think they need more leads, more pipeline, maybe even another salesperson. But the real issue is usually revenue architecture. Sales, marketing, customer success, and partnerships, they're all drifting apart or they're not systemized. This is what my diagnostic uncovers, and it's custom to your business. I don't bring the same deck to every company. Growth is way too nuanced for that. If you've been listening to the show and thinking, I'm not sure what's costing us revenue, I'm not sure exactly what to do, that is what my diagnostic is for. DM me on LinkedIn if that might be useful to you. All right, back to the conversation. So, salespeople really like to hold on to a deal. And a lot of times I see a pipeline that is full of hope and wishes and unicorns because the salesperson doesn't want to call that deal dead. And so I see a ton of bloated pipelines. From a sales perspective, I know why it's a challenge. But then can you tell me, for the audience's benefit as well, like
Mhm.
from a finance perspective, what is the risk of holding on to those deals and having a pipeline that isn't really based in like what could actually close this quarter.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you mentioned that it's what you're seeing is not uncommon. It comes back to, like, you need to create an operating system around it or a structure to make sense of it. So that pipeline is overbloated because you have the right definition of what stage 1, 2, 3, what will convert, what's really sure that will be, it's committed, it will convert probabilities between 80% and higher, or those that are not. So by having inflated and you don't have the operation structure or definition or taxonomy of what really it means, it will never answer the question, so what? So if you don't answer the question, so what, then you can't take the proper actions to convert it. Do you need to pull more marketing dollars, or do you need to get a spiff for sales? And therefore, what it means is then you can react of missing your target. And therefore, on the financial outcomes, while you have a lot of missed opportunity and you may be behind competition now. So it has an impact for the whole ecosystem and the whole company. So as simple as is inflated, and I get the concept of carrot and the stick, you're going to let's sandbag it, it's going to work, but it comes back on financial outcome, and be clear and transparent, put a range instead of saying it's 100 million. Well, what's the plus or minus, what's very sure probable to come or not, what's not? So then we could answer the question, well, so what's next? What action do you help? What do you need to help to convert this one to X to this? So it becomes more like a teamwork, a team effort. How do we get to the finish line versus, okay, well, you do your own thing and it's your target. At the end of the day, we're all going to lose. We're all stronger together. And I love that one. So, yeah.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for that. And that leads perfectly into something I wanted to ask Raven. So you've got sales and marketing teams. They kind of, in a nice way to say it, they resist accountability, especially when it comes to the finance side. So from a cultural, witchy perspective, like what is going on there?
This is what comes back to what Valerie said about trust. So,
Mm,
and the CEO and the executive team, right? So, if we don't trust the CEO and the executive team, and the executive team is warring in sales and marketing, right? Whose fault is it? Is it the pipeline? Is it the leads? Or is it it's all trust. And they don't trust
mm,
the outcome, which means the cultural outcome. How
mm,
are they going to be retaliated against if they don't say this number, which is why they won't give you the number, Valerie? They don't want to, because then they will be held accountable and they don't trust what will happen. And that all
mm,
comes from the CEO, the stakeholders, the founders, and the executive team. It all filters down. So that has to be created. So if you have a strong culture and they're not afraid to say what they need to say, they will be accountable. But I have yet to see, in my experience of 30 years working with multiple different clients and companies, that
mm,
trust there. They're always afraid of the outcome. And even I live in the state of California, which is the strictest labor laws in the country. They're still afraid when retaliation is obviously against the law, bullying, all of these things. But it does
mm,
happen. We just don't see it. But there, look at your attrition, talk to your people business partners. But that's why they don't want to be accountable. If you had a culture of trust, a culture of empathy, a culture of understanding, yes, we all need to make money. That's like a duh. Of course, the company needs to make money. Like, yeah, so we can all eat and pay our rent, but you need that trust there. So they won't fear what's going to happen. And fear is false evidence about reality. But if your culture isn't there, they're going to make up all their own realities and perceptions of what will happen. And because we all know and we've all seen it, some shitty things happen to employees because they need a scapegoat because there's no trust.
yeah, and that right there is the foundation on which silos are built.
Mhm.
The leaders will build their silos to protect their flock.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And that's where you don't, and that comes back to the alignment you were talking about when we first started this conversation. That's why you don't have alignment because each executive feels that they need to protect their people by laying blame someplace else and will not take accountability. And if they do, you'll see a 50% accountability. Oh, well, yeah, we did this, but you know, Tim over there in the beyond, he, whoa, right? And what they don't realize, all of this filters into the pipeline because all of this affects the customers and the clients of the organization through loyalty and transparency. And if you don't think your energy enters the room before you or the Zoom, it absolutely does. And so that's what a lot of times the executive teams don't realize how culture impacts all the way out to the world.
Yeah. And I've heard it a couple of times in this conversation, so I'm going to leave it here before I want to make another pivot. Like, it all starts with the founder, CEO, or owner, whatever they call themselves, like
Yes.
from them. And then the culture is defined, because if the leaders who report to them can't trust them to not get fired if they tell the truth, it
Yeah.
all breaks down from there. So, yes. So now that we've beat everybody up for a while, we don't just beat everybody up. People have to leave with some sort of insight. So let's talk about how we can fix it and what good looks like. And then we'll do a lightning round where somebody can be like, ooh, if I see this, like, here's a thing I could try today. So, Valerie, I want to start with you. What does good look like? And skip the kumbaya KPI shared dashboard type of BS, because we covered that in the last panel and we all decided it was malarkey. What does good actually look like from your perspective?
Well, it's interesting. So let me build on trust. So it seems like trust is a big topic here. So if we have trust, let's define what trust means to you and what it means to all of us. So for me, when you start about trust, you need to get clarity and you need to get, transparency. So where do you start? Obviously there's kumbaya on numbers, but numbers mean a lot. So I would say is the first step is really understanding the definition. So we're all aligned about the same language we're talking. We're not talking French, English, Spanish, or whatever. We're talking about numbers. So that's a common denominator and it helps build the trust. So then you could talk about your commitment, your opportunity, your pipeline. You're talking about the same thing. So you have line of sight, you have your North Star, and that helps build trust. The second thing is, how do you ladder that up? So how does that ladder up on your paycheck? We all work, we love working, but we have an outcome and we need the outcome to grow. How do we ladder that to the financial statement? What does it mean to you? What does it mean to the company? What does it mean to your retirement, if you think about it? And then after that is like just the conversation itself. The conversation itself will tell you if you have trust or not. When you see that, you hear it in the QBR conversations, or you hear it on the forecasts where things are really answering the right question. You build trust when people are really answering the question, so what? Don't divert on negotiation and target and so what. If you answer to so what and the conversation is more about the risk, how do we get the outcome or North Star and what we really need to make decision quicker? That builds trust too. And when this is all in place, we don't debate anymore. You'll go into forecast call and it's not going to be a negotiation call like between finance and go to market and HR, but everything will be aligned and we remove the noise and then there'll be a signal. And then it comes back that if you miss your target, we'll all know why. So it comes back to trust, but from a finance lens, it's getting clarity and transparency. And let's start with a common language.
I like that. And before I want Raven to comment, I have a question. And it's because I've seen this blow up a couple of times where leaders with good intention go too far with transparency, especially when an org is going through some change management and there's some toxic culture or things like that. There's a lot in flux and they feel like they want to communicate and be honest. And then they give people things that they don't have the experience to contextualize, and they do more harm than good. So, how much is the right level of transparency from your perspective?
There's a transparency, but it's like, what are the outcome and what's your intention? Are you transparent because you have a fear, or like what outcome you're trying to solve and what problem you're trying to solve?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I could be transparent in everything I did, but like, why would you care? And like, what does it mean? No, it's true. So if you think there's going to be an impact on an action or a decision or implication on risk and opportunity or visibility, or somebody could do something about it, then there's a way of being transparent. And transparent comes back to your level of confidence. Are you really confident of what you're saying? You're being transparent. You're not sure. Or like there's maybe something there, but I'm not the expert. So how you communicate of your level of confidence, expertise, and what does it mean and why, it
Mm.
just makes it easy. So there's always that range of like, be a team player first, put the culture first, put the company first, but don't put like necessarily you in the center. So just check with yourself first and see what are you trying to get as an outcome. And I think that helps.
Yeah. Start with the objective. I love it. Okay,
Mhm.
so then Raven, from the culture standpoint, how can we help people make finance not feel like the enemy? Like
Mhm.
how can we work on getting rid of that fear?
A proactive organization. A lot of what I see, it's always reactive. So then what Valerie's talking about is communication.
Mhm.
And so that is very key in understanding the definitions because even from just we'll take the state of California. We're not even talking about a global company with different countries. The language in Northern California is different than Southern California, right? So
Very.
we may all be speaking English, but slang actually plays a part in that. And we all
Mhm.
think we're going to coffee, but Tim, he's getting a taco because he's got something else going on. So it's being that happens so often. I'm just like, how do it's the definition. It's the definition of what we're talking about. So if you're in a reactive state, that's where it all goes to hell in a handbasket real quick because you don't pay attention to communication. You just think, we all know we're going to coffee. Go, guys. Really? Do we? Do we though? And who gave the message? And how did we make sure it went all the way down, right? If you're in a, this is how we help everybody, you become proactive. You ensure communication comes with training, facilitation. And
Mm.
it's not, if you guys ever played the game Whisper Down the Lane, where I whisper to Valerie the
Mm.
secret, and then she goes to Summer, and then Summer tells her daughter, and her daughter tells her husband, my God, he's not getting coffee at all. He's getting candy bars at the local five and dime
Yeah, he could get a
because
taco.
yeah, I was trying to change it up. See,
That's
he
okay.
wants a taco. But but that's what it is you have to ensure that once you create this message, how do we get it all the way down? And that comes into transparency. What you're talking about, Summer, is that's how they blow it with transparency. Yeah, we're gonna do this communication. They weren't properly trained, educated, defined. None of that was done. So they're gonna give Summer and Valerie the real deal just to make sure we're all in it together. And then poor Summer and Valerie miss the whole thing. They can't contextualize it like you're talking about, Summer. And so then they're like, oh my God, we're all getting fired tomorrow. Shit. What? What? You know how often that happens? That they had this great message up at the top. We spent all, because I'm a communication specialist as well and an expert. So I've crafted all of these messages, spent so much time, and they don't make sure it gets to the bottom. And the whole bottom is like, there's mass layoffs coming. And the
Yes.
people team will be like, what happened? What happened? Well, how did they get that?
And it's interesting
Yes.
because you're talking about definitions. You were talking about that game, the whisper game. I didn't know what it was because I call that a telephone game. One versus call the other.
Oh,
So
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
what
That's the
you
same
just did,
thing. Yep.
what you just
Yeah.
did right now, you mention it and then you translate what it meant and then you went down. So I'm like, what you just
Yes.
did is like it's just a good example of like, okay, are we all on the same page? And then let's go
Mm-hmm.
down. Now, who picks up the phone and translate it? It's a different story. But that was a
Mm-hmm.
good example without really knowing what you were doing. So good job, Raven.
I
Thank
love
you.
that. I think we're going to boil it down to transparency for transparency's sake is stupid. And what I kind of heard in a roundabout way was like closing the communication loop and making sure that they understood what you intended them to
Mm-hmm.
understand, which is
Mm-hmm.
the difference between, hey, we're gaining momentum and revenue's growing and you all should go like look for another job. Like I'm laughing and I shouldn't laugh. Shame on me. I just yes, I've seen that. Anyway,
It happens. And you have to
it
laugh
totally
about it.
does
Yeah,
all
because
the
that's how
time.
you fix it. Don't get mad. This
Yeah,
happens. This happens everywhere. This happens in all walks of life. Just go
it
understand,
does.
own it, and move forward.
Understand when you're communicating something that people always make the worst assumption. I don't know
Hmm.
why. If
Hmm.
we have missing details, we'll make up a story, and it's always a terrible story. Always.
Well, that's how they've trained us in America. Just watch the news. Just
Mm.
that'll tell you. It's a societal thing. unfortunately.
It's a shit show right now. So now that we've touched on that, I'm going to make another hard pivot. And I'm going to have to skip because we talked too much. Where's my lightning round? Thank God for edit. Holy Jesus. We got through half of what I thought we would get through. That means we had a good conversation, and that
I
means I
know.
might need a part 3. All right, we've covered a lot. Lightning round time. So what is one thing that someone can steal is what the lightning round is about. So I'm going to start with Valerie and then Raven. Like, if a founder or CEO is listening and their go-to-market team is aligned, but the revenue is still stuck, what is the first thing they could check?
I think I repeated it, so let me repeat it again. It's make
All
sure that
good.
your go-to-market matrix, or when you talk about QBRs or what good looks like, are just tied to your financial outcome. If you're focusing on new business, make sure what you're doing ties to a new business matrix. Or if you're talking about churn, make sure it ties to it. And how does that convert on revenue? So just make sure it ties so you talk the same language to C staff and CFOs. I would say, because what happens is you get really focused on the operational, what you need on pipeline execution and fill, but you could actually do all this very well, but you're not growing your business. So just make sure it ties to your financial outcome. So those matrix, when they do it, they'll just help leadership inspect it and look at their strategic bets and adjust quickly and change the signal if they need to. So just that extra translation will really help actually connect the next dot for a better outcome for all.
We want better outcomes. All right, Raven, what's one thing they could look at today?
Again, that communication. Who's talking and what's happening? And it's like a puzzle. Every person, all their talent is part of the puzzle. Who's doing what? When are they doing it? Where are we doing it? And that all goes to the outcome, the execution of it. So then if the communication is there, we all know what they're doing. They can figure out if there's a miss, if there's a challenge, where it lies within this. It's constant follow up, follow through, follow up, follow through. Sometimes we see that where the plan's there, everybody off they go. Then what happened? Then what happened? Where's the follow up, follow through? It's a constant thing. So you can pivot, so you can change in the moment, which is proactive versus reactive, right? So
Yeah.
that's my takeaway. Be proactive. I don't care if all your numbers look great. Still ask what's happening, who's doing it, why are we doing it? Are they doing the right thing? Can we change? Can we do something else? I'm one of those individuals who, just because I did it this morning, doesn't mean I'm going to fucking do it right now. It could have went terrible. Change.
Yes. Yes. And that rings true for me because when people come to me for help with their revenue growth, they've always waited too long. And it's always a bigger lift. Like, if you've stalled for a quarter, be proactive and do something now. Even if you haven't stalled, the best time to work on your next growth strategy is when you're crushing it and you're like, money's raining from the sky. Go find somebody to help you work on your next growth strategy. All about proactive.
Absolutely.
I loved this conversation, as evidenced by the fact that we only got to half of it. So I'm going to ask you guys on camera, and feel free to say no. Do you want to find a date to record the stuff I made you prepare for that we didn't have time for?
Absolutely.
Yes, I had a lot to say.
Rad. Awesome. I will send that out. So everybody, if you're listening in the gym or the car, keep an eye out for part 3. I appreciate you. I will see you next week, and follow these women. I will drop their LinkedIn in the show notes. Thanks, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so